Week 2 with the Matt Barrie Show, presented by Allstate. I am Matt Barrie. College football season off and running. Week 2, when you look at it, we came into week 1. We were excited about all the marquee matchups, everything that went down, all the upsets, all the talking points. And then week 2, you kind of step back a little bit and everything starts to take its place. And for me in week 2, it was going to be all about the bounce backs. We'll get into that with Paul Finebaum this morning. The Arch Manning bounce back against San Jose State, the Alabama bounce back. We knew there was going to be some blowouts, but we also learned a lot about some of these teams. So I cannot wait to dig into this. It was a good day for the SEC. It was an atrocious day for the Big 12. So much to get to and more here. Week 2 of the Matt Barrie Show, presented by Allstate. But now it is time, as always, we'll do it every single week. Our Good Hands play, presented by Allstate. And for me, the story of the season so far is South Florida. This is Nico Gramatica setting up for what amounts to be an extra point to upset Florida in the swamp. Snap clean, kick clean. Nico Gramatica is Automatica, just like his dad, Martin Gramatica, the great kicker of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And just like that, South Florida, 3 ranked games to start the season. Boise State in week 1 called them in the opening Thursday night game. They won. At Florida week 2, they win yesterday. Next week, they get Miami. Could they continue this magical run? We'll find out. But with all the storylines, Alabama, Arch Manning, who's the best team in the country? Is Bryce Underwood going to be the next great star? Is Oklahoma legit? All of that we'll get to. But South Florida, Tampa, Alex Golesh, for me, is the story in college football right now as we embark on a discussion of a busy week 2 around the country. All right, so I think that's a great jumping off point for my guy, Paul Finebaum, as we recap an interesting week 2. It didn't have the headliners like we had in week 1, Paul, as we mentioned a moment ago. But for me, the biggest story in all of the sport, as I said a second ago, is South Florida, now 2 ranked wins. Unfortunately for Billy Napier and the Gators, it came at his expense at home in the swamp on a night where the offense looked listless. And because of it, they lose a game that they were favored, Paul, by 18.5 points.
And Matt, not only were they favored, this was probably the second easiest game on their schedule now that everything has repositioned with Florida State and Miami and literally everyone else on their schedule. So, we talked about them a couple of weeks ago as a playoff team. I mean, they're no longer a playoff team. They're not really even a team that you have to take seriously anymore, especially when you look at the absolute meltdown at the end of that game. I mean, it's completely inexcusable. And what's even worse is it's a continuum of the way Billy Napier has been coaching for most of his tenure at Florida. He got on that winning streak at the end when everything seemed to come together, but it appears that he's thrown all that away. His goodwill has gone down the drain. He is clearly back on the hot seat, and his worst enemy right now is the schedule. I mean, Matt, anybody can figure this thing out. The next 4 games are at LSU, at Miami, Texas at home, and at Texas A&M. I mean, where in the world do you find a win in that group?
Okay, every coach has that moment in their career at a school where you get through the rough beginning of laying the foundation. You kind of have some choppy waters and a little bit of turbulence as you get to that point. And then if it's going the right way, there's a breakthrough. And that's what we thought Napier had last year with that ridiculous schedule to get bowl eligible and win the bowl game. You're thinking, okay, here we go. It's starting to take root in Gainesville. And then yesterday, when you're an offensive head coach and you got DJ Lagway and the hype coming back, you can't have what you had yesterday. But for me, the players spitting, Paul, at the end of the game, and then South Florida taking it all the way down the field. Joey Galloway said it on College Football Finals, said it in studio. He's like, look, South Florida wanted this game more. And that when you're saying that about a Florida team at the swamp, that's saying something.
Yeah, I mean, it's 100% true. And I mean, I've run out of adjectives and we're barely into this segment, but that's, you can blame that on any way you want. I mean, ultimately the players are responsible, but if that's how they feel, then what sense is there to continue this? Because I remember last year they got off to that disastrous start, but they were losing to good teams. They lost to Miami in the opener and Texas A&M in the third week. I mean, they were both quite good at the time, and then they came back. But how do you come back from this? And the questions that Scott Strickland, the athletic director there, has been dodging are now right back with him. And he just got a new extension, by the way, the AD. So you have to wonder, is he in the same position that he was when he has been boldly defending Billy Napier for so long? I'd be curious to see what he says now.
Yeah, especially like when you have an AD that hitches his wagon to two head coaches, one he got rid of, Dan Mullen, to bring in his replacement. Usually, sometimes that typically ends the AD's run if the football coach that he hired isn't successful. Interesting situation there in Gainesville. I still think it's too early to look too far into the future with what's going on with Billy Napier. But again, yesterday it starts bringing these bad feelings to mind for Gators fans and people around the country. It's like, well, wait a second. I thought this was going to be on his star quarterback, DJ Lagway. He was going to hitch himself to him, and they were going to go on this magical run. And that just wasn't the case yesterday. But on a positive side, Alex Gold is South Florida. Right now, the biggest surprise in college football. They should be ranked when the poll comes out, and they have Miami to wrap up their 3-game gauntlet to start the season. We kind of built it yesterday in studio throughout the day as bounce back week. Arch Manning bounced back against San Jose State. Alabama bounced back in their game against UL Monroe, Sunday stupids. Let's start with Arch. Early on, that thing was a 3-and-out, overthrew a guy dropped a pass, and you're like, oh, here we go. But then he threw the 89-yard touchdown to Parker Livingston, and he kind of just got rolling. There were still some spots where he needs to grow. But, Paul, I think overall, at least for this week for Arch in Texas, there's a little bit of an exhale because they put up some points, and he totaled 5 touchdowns.
Yeah, somebody asked me earlier, do I think he's a Heisman candidate? And of course, I don't think anybody can answer that. You can say yes or no, and both answers are probably about the same because the Heisman is not going to be determined right now. But the most important thing for him is he got a good game in. He's back to doing things that we expected of him. And ultimately, Arch is going to be tested when they have a good opponent, which they won't for another couple of weeks. I suspect he'll be a lot better, Matt.
Yeah, he's an interesting one because we this was ad nauseum last week about the hype and everything that was bestowed upon him that he didn't ask for. And I don't think he's ever still going to live up to that because we're going to do this every week because we have to because of the story that surrounds him. But you beat an inferior opponent. You throw some touchdown passes. You rush for another touchdown. You at least make people feel better about the taste of their food when you come off the Ohio State game. But I'm also one of those, Paul, that when you look at we've talked about this a million times. Sometimes the schedule falls right in place for everything to go your way. If Texas opens with San Jose State and they're getting ready for Ohio State in week 2, now we're having a completely different conversation. But because that was flipped, we have to look at it from a different prism of, okay, Sark has 3 weeks to get this thing back to where it needs to be. And it's going to be, I still think Texas is going to be one of the more polarizing storylines this year because the 5-star Wingo has the drops. He clearly likes Livingston, the receiver, as his number 1. CJ Baxter's back and healthy. They still have the guys, but I believe it's going to be a while until we forget about what happened in week 1. And I don't even know if that's fair.
Well, whether it is or not, you can't forget that until he does it, he undoes it. And he has to undo it on the road in the SEC. And if he does, then he can start working his way back. I mean, right now, what I got out of it, and I'm not trying to sound like goody two shoes here, but it was fun to see him happy, exhaling, celebrating. I mean, that is ultimately what this is about in theory. But he had a rough week. He survived it. That's all that matters. I'll spare you every cliche that we've ever learned on a little league team or anywhere else. But I really still believe that he will be good. Will he be generational? I'll leave that to the experts.
We're literally going to have to go by this thing week to week with Arch because it's going to be a fun ride. And that's what I love about it because you can see the talents there. How much he does with it remains to be seen. Speaking of bounce back, that's kind of how we themed it again in studio yesterday. Say what you want. I know who they played, and I know that people are still a little angsty in Tuscaloosa, but you hang 70 plus. You do what you should do against an inferior opponent. At least things right now for Alabama, they know that they have it in them, and you can kind of not breathe a sigh of relief. It's like, okay, we can still beat the hell out of bad teams. That's a good sign if we're being positive here.
Well, it's better than the alternative. And if Alabama had gone out there and struggled and won 24-10, it would just be a continuation of an extreme week of negativity. What you do have to wonder is why it took the second week of the season for Kalen DeBoer to connect with his players. He clearly failed to do it in the first week. But sometimes, Matt, I mean, you play golf. I mean, you play one of the five toughest courses in America, and you can't do anything, and you go out to a muni that's made for fun, and all of a sudden you feel great about your golf game again. That's essentially what happened here. They Alabama opened at Seminole, a good club down in Florida, and then they played at the Monroe Muni yesterday. Where the course where it's one of the top 25,000 courses in Louisiana. So it was made for them. I'm glad to see Alabama fans celebrating a 70 whatever victory over Monroe. It doesn't change the concerns, though, that will come back again in about 3 weeks when Alabama goes to Georgia.
We have this long off season of 222 days for the national championship. So all we do is talk and read magazines and anoint people and teams as the greatest thing ever because we have so much time. We have 6+ months to talk about it and build up the matchups. Then week one gets here. We hone in on the hugest games of the beginning of the season. Some of those don't go the way that fit our preseason narrative and storyline. And then all hell breaks loose and everything falls apart. And then you get to these week 2 games where the coaches are like, hey, can I just get my team back together? Can we just get back on the field and play a little football and just let this thing mature? Whereas it worked for Alabama, I'm not sure it was that inspiring for LSU and Georgia, where, at least from LSU's perspective, they come off the huge win against Clemson. Then they kind of played with their food a little bit yesterday against Louisiana Tech, and Georgia did the same against Austin Peay. And that's what the beautiful thing is about this sport. You can go from the highest of highs and then sit here on a Sunday morning like we do every week and scratching your head and saying, why did Georgia, why was that even close? And why did LSU do that against Louisiana Tech? And Paul, it really is just a puzzling thing how this thing works out.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you have to wonder if a coach, in this case Kirby Smart and Brian Kelly, just kept the flame in the back burner. I don't know. I'm sure they would deny that, but they both have huge games this coming week. Georgia,
Yeah.
Tennessee, obviously LSU hosting. Well, it was supposed to be a huge game against Florida, and so you just I don't know how you do that, but I mean it's like anybody. In any athletic endeavor, you can go at a different skill. For whatever reason, Kalen DeBoer decided to go DEFCON 1 against a team that they would have still won easily. They were a 35-point favorite. But it doesn't matter, where I don't think it matters in that case. But I think in Kelly and Kirby's case, they just kept it. They kept it low key. They kept it vanilla. They just don't want to give away anything with really big games coming up.
Well, they're above average. It was going to get them a win on Saturday anyway. It's just puzzling when you look at the score and you're like, why is that even something we have to watch? Because it's kind of close when in reality on the field it wasn't. Did Oklahoma announce their arrival in the SEC with the win over Michigan on Saturday?
Maybe that would not be considered one of their toughest games of the year, but in terms of statement, it was probably the most important game of the year, only because had they not won, Matt, that would have been the story of the day. And Brett Venables would be on everybody's hot seat list. Instead, he's got some room to breathe, and you need that. So stay like Hugh Freeze a week ago, beating Baylor. Probably looks a little bit better today than maybe it did even 8 days ago. But everybody has that big game, And for Venables, that was game day, prime time, major opponent, and they delivered. And I think it was going to give him some room. His schedule is still insane, but he's got some juice going. He's got some fuel,
Yeah.
and he really needed it badly. And John Mateer to me looked very, very good.
Yeah, and so that we were talking about that in studio last night with EJ Manuel and Joey Galloway. Like in this day and age in college football, it used to be that you would live and die with the recruits that you brought in. Those were your guys. And if you didn't have a veteran quarterback that you got as a true freshman and developed, or had a true freshman that just happens to be a complete superstar and it failed, that means you failed. Now you can go get a John Mateer because you know you're going to have defense because of the head coach's bona fides as defensive coordinator. You didn't really have an offense last year, so you bring in a new offensive coordinator. You bring in John Mateer, who I believe is probably going to start entering the Heisman Trophy conversation as the weeks go on. And it's funny, like overnight, Paul, how quickly things can change in college football now, in that your one deficiency can be fixed with a nice check and the right player and the right quarterback to fix everything.
Yeah, but I think we knew Mateer was going to be good.
Yeah.
He swagged on into media days. He looked the part, and I mean, he got the full package. He got his OC and his QB coach coming over from Washington State. That's a really good deal. But I really do believe Oklahoma will make noise. I mean, they got Auburn in 2 weeks. That is a big game, but then they get on a run with Texas and so many other opponents. But their schedule is very similar to Florida's, probably the two toughest in the SEC. But they're alive. And a year ago today, they were not. They got knocked around by Tennessee on the second week of the season. It really stopped their momentum, and this time around, Sooner fans are finally feeling good. The questions I have are more on the Michigan side, and Sharon Moore. I was underwhelmed by that operation.
Yeah, it's with such a talented true freshman quarterback in Bryce Underwood. He looks the part, but man, that thing, at least for the start of this season and last year, just it doesn't have the same punch as it did with Jim Harbaugh. We'll give it some time because some of the talent is there. Where were you on Ole Miss and Kentucky? It was close for a while. Ole Miss pulls away. Kentucky kicks a late field goal to make it not look as bad as it is. Mark Stoops goes down in a game he won a year ago. Lane Kiffin gets his revenge. His quarterback, Austin Simmons, had an ankle late in the game. Where do you stand on that one? That was kind of an off-Broadway performance yesterday with some of the other stuff going on.
Yeah, I expected a bigger performance. Some of the crew I was with yesterday morning uh, thought it would be a slog. I'm not reading too much into it. I think Lane Kiffin just had to get the win. Uh, the field goal just was really curious to me. I mean, I don't. I guess right now Mark Stoops is just trying to make things look better than maybe they really are. But I bet deep down Lane's not overly concerned.
Yeah, if you were on the Kentucky side of that, the point spread, I believe, was 8.5. And so that went from 10 to 7. And so you got on the right side of that. If you were on the Ole Miss side, you were furious about it. So week 2, look, it is what it is. Biggest storyline, Billy Napier in Florida. They kind of spit the bit a little bit. Arch looks good. Alabama looks good. Sets up the table for week 3. We can recap week 2 as much as we want, but I want to be the first to get into the next upcoming week in week 3 with a couple of these matchups, Paul, before we get you out of here. There's 3 of them that stand out: Georgia, Tennessee, Texas A&M, Notre Dame. You mentioned LSU, Florida. Let's go Georgia, Tennessee, because at least for now, Joey Aguilar, quarterback, Tennessee, appears to be a good fit with Josh Heupel. And Georgia, we'll learn a lot about Gunnar Stockton and this team because here we go, Paul. Week 3, we've got some conference play, and it's going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, I think this is a tremendous moment for Tennessee. Where is this program? And yeah, it's I don't know if it's possible to get less out of the playoffs than Tennessee did last year. It didn't really carry over because of the Nico controversy. Aguilar looks good, but this is Tennessee's best shot at Georgia in a very long time, certainly since Josh Heupel has arrived. Georgia's still a mystery.
Yeah.
There's a lot of criticism of Mike Bobo, the OC. There's still some doubts about Gunnar Stockton, and this will define the Dogs, I think. We know the setting. We know the situation. If they don't look good and lose this game, the doubts are going to creep in. If they can be impressive, then Georgia may be back to its old tricks.
And I think the same for LSU. I'm bullish on Brian Kelly, Garrett Nussmeier, and this team. And based on what we saw to Florida, it's the SEC, you're going to get a fight from everyone week in and week out. But I also believe that if LSU comes out there and is the alpha for 4 quarters and kind of stomps on them, you have to start considering LSU now as like, okay, the Clemson thing wasn't an aberration, even though Clemson looked awful in the first half against Troy yesterday. I think the same thing about LSU, that you can really go out there, Paul, and say, hey, we're the best team in this conference right here, right now.
Yeah, I mean, the Florida loss dings this game from a big-time national standpoint. Probably would have been game day, probably would have been all the usual accoutrements. And by the way, I'm sure game day was also looking at West Virginia. I'm sure the fans there are really happy this morning. Losing a great 3-hour commercial for a school that hasn't had much going for them lately. So, but back to LSU, I think Brian Kelly probably a little bit unnerved with that Florida loss because he knows how players are. But this is a place they lost last year. It was a bad loss too. I mean, it stung, and I think that will be the driving force all week long with LSU.
And I would tell you, one team that bubbled up last year in his first year, and they actually had an opportunity to control their own destiny and go to the SEC championship, Texas A&M and Mike Elko. Marcel Reed, to me, has completely changed the way that he plays quarterback, and that you have to be concerned with him as a runner and a thrower. Le'Veon Moss is healthy. Paul, Texas A&M has a chance now against Notre Dame in a big-time spot to say, look, don't forget about us. We're going to be in this thing till the end. And I think week 3 sets up a fascinating opportunity for now us to learn who we're going to have to contend with here the rest of September and going into October.
Yeah. This game last year was the opening game. A&M just wasn't ready. They slopped around and let Notre Dame win. But this game is important for a lot of reasons. But I think it probably is more important for Notre Dame. They now they feel the heat. I mean, they cannot lose this game, or they may be out of the playoffs before they can, even get to the first day of autumn. So I think the pressure's on. I think that favors Texas A&M a little bit. I'm not really sure yet. I mean, it's Sunday. It's a long way till Saturday afternoon in South Bend, but it is a sneaky great game.
Yeah, it's a sneaky great week with some of the marquee matchups. Rejoice, we all made it through kind of a muddy Saturday. There was some good. There was some talk about. There were some great games that didn't get national attention. NC State, Virginia went down to the end. That was phenomenal. Baylor, SMU, that was a phenomenal game. Shout out to Dave Aranda and the Bears. They've now won 14 straight against SMU. Mississippi State and Jeff Lebby, Paul, at the end of that game, get a win over 12th ranked Arizona State. So just enough droppings out there to kind of wet our whistle until we get to another big week.
Yeah, no, I mean, I have friends at Mississippi State that were concerned they'd start the season 0-2 with Southern Miss and Arizona State, and look at them at 2-0. And it's really nice to see because Jeff Lebby was one of the great coordinators in the country and has struggled as a head coach. But that was a turning point.
And herein lies the beauty of the 12-team playoff. If you're an SMU fan of the ACC, you're still alive because it was a non-conference game. If you're Arizona State, you're still alive because it was a non-conference game. So here we are, week 3 on the way after an up and down week 2. As always, we'll be here with you every Sunday morning to break it down on a marquee week coming up. Paul Finebaum and Matt Barrie here on the Matt Barrie Show, presented by Allstate.
You want this, you got that. No